My grandma's will had one condition. I had to live in her abandoned house for a month. Welcome back with a new, real shock story. Before we start, comment and tell me which city you're watching from. AT the end. Don't forget to subscribe and rate it from 0 to 10. Let's enjoy the story, everyone.
I never believed that one piece of paper could change everything, but that's exactly what happened the day I opened my grandma's will. She had passed away a week earlier, peacefully, they said, but nothing about her life or her death ever felt peaceful to me. Grandma May was the kind of woman people whispered about, even when she was alive. Some called her strange, others said she was gifted. All I knew was that she always had secrets, and apparently, one last secret to give me. When the lawyer read her will, I expected something small or keepsake, maybe her old jewelry box, or one of her antique books, but then he looked straight at me and said, "Alec, your grandmother left something specifically for you, but there's a condition." A condition. The room went quiet. My mother looked confused. My aunt rolled her eyes, and I just froze. The lawyer continued reading, his voice steady, to my granddaughter. "Alec Rose, I leave my home at 49 Willow Creek Road, on one condition. She must live there for 1 full month, alone." Everyone looked at me like the air had been sucked out of the room. That house, I hadn't been there since I was 9. It was old, cracked, and sat deep in the woods, far from town. I still remembered the peeling wallpaper, the creaking stairs, the smell of lavender and dust. But most of all, I remembered the whispers. I used to hear them when I stayed there as a child, soft voices in the hallway at night. My grandma would hush me and say, "Those are just the old walls talking, darling." But even back then, I knew she was lying. Still, I laughed when the lawyer finished reading. "She can't be serious," I said, but his expression told me she absolutely was. If I wanted the house or anything inside it, I had to stay there. 1 month, alone. And here's the part that really scared me. Grandma's house had been abandoned for over 15 years. That night, I couldn't sleep. The words repeated in my mind again and again. 1 month, alone. Why me? Why that house? What did she want me to find or remember? The next morning, I drove out there. Willow Creek Road was exactly as I remembered, quiet, narrow, and surrounded by thick trees that looked darker than I ever remembered. The house appeared suddenly at the end of the path, tall and sunken like it was breathing its last breath. Its windows were covered in dust and spiderweb. The front door leaned to one side, the paint peeling like old skin. My hands trembled as I turned the rusted key in the lock. The moment I stepped inside, the air felt heavy, not just musty or old but almost alive. It smelled the same as it did years ago, lavender and dust but stronger, almost suffocating. I could feel the air pressing against me, like the house was watching. The floorboards creaked under my weight. I walked slowly, taking it all in, the furniture still covered in white sheets, the clock on the wall, frozen, at 3:12, the same time it had stopped the night Grandma died. I don't know why, but that made my stomach twist. I unpacked my bag in the small guest room, because there was no way I was sleeping in Grandma's old room upstairs. I kept telling myself this was fine, that I could handle it. It was just a month, after all. But as the sun began to set, the house grew colder. The shadows stretched longer, the air thicker. Every sound echoed like a whisper. And then, right as I sat down to eat the sandwich I'd packed, I heard it, a faint knock. But at first, I thought it was the wind. But it came again, 3 slow knocks from somewhere deep inside the house. My heart jumped into my throat. I froze, listening. Silence. Then from upstairs, I heard the creak of a door opening. Every part of me wanted to run, but something, maybe curiosity, maybe fear, kept me rooted to the floor. Grandma's voice echoed in my mind. "Those are just the old walls talking, darling." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But as the clock on the wall suddenly ticked once, just once, and stopped again, I realized something chilling. The house wasn't empty, and whatever was inside had been waiting for me. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the same faint creaks above my head, like footsteps moving slowly across the attic floor. I told myself it was just the wind, the wood expanding in the cold, but deep down, I knew better. At around 3:15 a.m., I woke up to silence, not peaceful silence, the kind that's too quiet, like the world was holding its breath. My phone was dead. The power had flickered off sometime during the night, and the air felt colder than before. I pulled the blanket tighter and whispered, "Just a month, Alec, just a month." The next morning, sunlight broke through the dirty windows, painting long, dusty streaks across the floor. It almost looked peaceful again. I made coffee using a small camping stove I'd brought because of course the kitchen appliances didn't work and tried to convince myself last night was just nerves. To calm myself, I started exploring the house. Every corner held some piece of my childhood: an old photo frame, a cracked teacup, a drawer full of faded postcards. But as I moved through the rooms, I noticed something strange. The furniture was still covered in sheets, all except one chair in the living room. The white cloth that had once covered it was folded neatly on the floor beside it, like someone had removed it carefully. I froze. I hadn't touched that chair. When I stepped closer, I saw that the chair cushion was sunken, like someone had been sitting there recently. I told myself maybe I'd forgotten, maybe I'd brushed against it last night, maybe a sound interrupted my thoughts. A soft humming. It was coming from the hallway. I turned my head slowly. The sound was faint, almost like a lullaby. A woman's voice. Familiar. My chest tightened. That song. Grandma used to hum that when I was little. She said it was something her mother used to sing to her, something that kept the darkness away. But there was no one in the hallway, no one in the whole house but me. The humming stopped. I stood there for what felt like forever. My breath shallow, every instinct telling me to leave. But I didn't, I couldn't. Something inside me needed to know why Grandma made this condition, why she wanted me here. Later that afternoon, I went up to the attic. The wooden stairs groaned beneath my weight, dust swirling in the air with each step. I'd always been afraid of this place. Even as a child, I hated it. Grandma used to keep the door locked, saying it was not safe for curious girls. When I pushed the door open, the smell hit me first: old paper, cedar wood, and something metallic. The light from the single window barely reached the corners of the room. Boxes lined the walls, and in the center was a trunk. A large, dark green trunk with brass edges and a heavy lock. The moment I saw it, my stomach dropped. I remembered that trunk. Grandma never let me touch it. I kneeled in front of it, brushing off the dust. The lock was rusted but loose. It took some effort, but I managed to snap it open. The lid creaked, and inside, I found things I couldn't explain. Old photographs, letters tied with red ribbon, a faded dress that looked exactly like one Grandma used to wear. And beneath it, a journal. It was bound in cracked brown leather, my grandmother's initials engraved on the cover. I opened it carefully. The first few pages were normal entries about her garden, her arthritis, her recipes. But then, halfway through, the tone changed. The house speaks at night. One entry read, "It knows when someone is alone. I hear them again, the voices in the walls. They tell me to stay, to protect the bloodline." I frowned, flipping through more pages. Each one grew stranger, more frantic. The whispers grow louder near the attic. They don't want to hurt me. They want to be heard. If she ever returns, the house will show her the truth. Did she mean me? I felt dizzy, like the walls were closing in. Suddenly, I heard a loud bang from downstairs. I froze, clutching the journal. It came against something falling, hard, like furniture being pushed over. My heart pounded as I crept down the stairs, each step slower than the last. When I reached the bottom, I saw the living room chair again. This time, it wasn't just uncovered. It had moved. It was facing the staircase, facing me. My throat went dry. I took a step back, then another, until I bumped into something behind me. The air turned cold. My skin prickled. I could feel it, something standing there. Close, too close. Turned around. Nothing. Just the empty hallway stretching into shadow. But then, I noticed something else. The clock on the wall. It had started ticking again. Slowly, steadily. 3:12 p.m. The same time it had stopped when Grandma died. My hands trembled as I picked up the journal again. I turned to the last written page. If she hears the ticking, it's already begun. The page after that was blank. I stared at it, heart racing, my mind screaming to leave, but something inside whispered, "Don't, not yet." Maybe Grandma wasn't crazy. Maybe she'd been trying to warn me. Maybe this whole condition wasn't about inheritance at all. It was about survival. That night, I decided to sleep in the living room, close to the door just in case. I left a flashlight and my keys beside me, promising myself I'd leave first thing in the morning. But as I drifted into uneasy sleep, I heard it again, that same soft humming, closer this time, right next to my ear. I opened my eyes, and the last thing I saw before the flashlight went out was a shadow moving across the walls, slow and graceful, like someone rocking in that chair. someone who shouldn't be there. I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house made my heart jump. The sound of the old pipes, the whisper of wind slipping through the cracks, it all felt alive. The air was heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. I kept hearing footsteps when I knew I was alone, slow, careful, almost thoughtful. At around 2 a.m., I heard it again, the faint sound of something dragging across the wooden floor upstairs. I froze. My heart started pounding so loud I could hear it echoing in my ears. I told myself it was just the old house settling, but deep down, I knew this wasn't the house. This was someone. With trembling hands, I grabbed the flashlight from my nightstand and pointed it toward the staircase. The light flickered just once and then steadied. "Hello." My voice barely came out. I waited. Silence. Then a soft thud. I stepped onto the first stair, the wood groaning under my weight. The air was colder up there. The smell of dust and old wood filled my lungs. As I reached the top, I noticed something strange. The door to my grandmother's old bedroom was open. I knew I had closed it earlier that evening. I took a deep breath and pushed it wider. The flashlight's beam landed on something that made my stomach twist, a small wooden box sitting on the bed. I recognized it immediately. My grandmother's will box. But it wasn't there before. I stepped closer, every instinct in my body screaming to stop. When I opened the box, there was only one thing inside, an old, wrinkled photo. It was of me, as a child, standing outside this very house. But someone had drawn a red circle around the window behind me and written one sentence across the bottom: "She's still here." My knees almost gave out. The flashlight shook in my hand. "She's still here." What did that mean? My grandmother had passed away years ago. I whispered, "Grandma," but the word came out more like a plea than a question. Then I heard it, a whisper, soft, almost like a sigh. It came from behind me. I spun around, the flashlight slicing through the darkness. Just shadows, but I felt it's someone standing right there, watching me. Suddenly, the flashlight went out. I was swallowed by darkness. My breath came fast, uneven. I could hear the house breathing with me, every wall creaking in rhythm. I tried turning on the flashlight again, tapping it hard, and then it flickered back to life just for a second. And in that second, I saw something I will never forget. In the reflection of the old mirror across the room, stood a figure, a woman, pale, with long silver hair, wearing what looked like a nightgown that shimmered faintly in the light. Her eyes weren't angry, they looked sad. But before I could move or speak, the light died again, and the room went black. I ran down the stairs, nearly falling as I reached the bottom. I didn't stop until I was outside on the porch, gasping for air. The cold night air bit into my skin, grounding me back to reality. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I looked up at the house, and in the window of my grandmother's bedroom, I saw it again, a faint silhouette, watching. That was the night everything changed. That was the moment I stopped wondering if this was about the will or about me. I knew it was both. The next morning, I tried to convince myself I had imagined it all. Maybe exhaustion, or fear, or just the weight of the house's silence had played tricks on me. But then, while I was making coffee, I saw something that made my blood run cold. On the kitchen table lay the same photo from the night before, the one with the red circle. Only this time, a new message was scribbled across it in shaky handwriting. "You're not alone, Alec." My cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. My heart dropped into the pit of my stomach. That handwriting, it looked exactly like mine. The truth hit me so hard, I could barely breathe. The messages, the noises, the feeling of being watched, it wasn't just the house. It was something deeper, something that had always been here, tied to me in a way I couldn't understand yet. I knew then that the will, the condition, and the reason my grandmother made me stay here, it all connected. She hadn't left this house, not completely. And whatever secret she took to her grave, it was now haunting me. That morning, I couldn't stop staring at the photo. My hands were trembling as I held it, tracing the red circle with my fingertip. "You're not alone, Alec." The words felt heavy, not like a warning but like a reminder, a connection. The house was silent again, almost too silent. The air was thick, heavy, and still carried that faint scent of lavender my grandmother used to wear. I sat there, trying to make sense of everything. I didn't know if I was losing my mind, or if something far bigger than me was trying to reach out. Then, I remembered something. A hidden drawer. When I was little, Grandma once showed me a secret compartment under the floorboard in her room. She'd smiled, pressing her finger to her lips. "That's our secret, Alec. she'd whispered. My chest tightened as I knelt beside the old dresser. The boards creaked as I pried one loose. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. And there it was, a small, dust-covered journal, tied with a faded red ribbon. The cover was cracked and worn, the pages yellowed with age, but the moment I opened it, I knew it was her handwriting, my grandmother's. The first page began, softly, lovingly. "If you're reading this, my sweet girl, then the house has chosen you." I froze. My throat went dry. Chosen me. The entries that followed were darker pages filled with grief, guilt, and fear. She wrote about hearing voices after my grandfather's death, about the shadows that moved on their own, about the presence that never left the house. No matter how many prayers she whispered. But one entry made me stop breathing altogether. "She protects the women of our family, Alec. She has always been with us. She watched me, she watched my mother, and one day, she will watch you. Do not fear her. Fear what she guards you from." My heartbeat slowed. Everything suddenly made sense. The footsteps, the whispers, the figure in the mirror. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was protecting me. But from what? The next few pages told the truth I wasn't ready for. My grandmother had a sister, Eleanor, a twin. I had never heard her name before. They grew up in this same house, inseparable until one night, Eleanor disappeared. People said she ran away, but my grandmother wrote otherwise. She never left. Her spirit stayed, watching, waiting, bound to the house through pain I caused. I felt a cold wave roll through my body. My grandmother had done something that tied her sister's spirit here. And now that she was gone, Eleanor had turned her eyes to me. That night, I sat on the floor of the living room, the journal in my lap, tears streaking down my face. I whispered, "Eleanor, if you can hear me, I'm not afraid." The lights flickered once, gently, like a reply. "I just want to understand," I said, my voice breaking. "What do you want from me?" For a moment, everything was still, and then, faintly, the mirror on the wall began to fog. Though the room was cold, my breath caught as words appeared slowly in the mist written by a hand I could not see. "To remember me." My tears came harder. All this time, she hadn't wanted to scare me. She just didn't want to be forgotten. She was protecting the legacy my grandmother had buried in silence. I whispered, "I remember you now." The air softened, the heaviness lifted. For the first time since I entered the house, it felt warm, peaceful. That night, I slept soundly for the first time. No whispers, no shadows, just quiet, safe, gentle, quiet. When I woke up, sunlight streamed through the window, golden and bright. The photo was gone. The journal was still there, but the last page had changed. A new line had been written in soft, elegant handwriting. "Thank you, Alec. You broke the silence." I smiled through tears. My grandmother's will wasn't a punishment. It was a bridge away to heal the pain that had lived in this house for generations. By staying here, by listening, I had given peace to the spirit who never left. When I left the house at the end of that month, I looked back one last time. The curtains moved, just slightly, as if someone was waving goodbye, and I swear, I felt love, not fear, love. Maybe some houses don't haunt you because they're cursed. Maybe they haunt you because they miss you. Even now, whenever I close my eyes, I can still feel her presence, gentle, protective, quiet, and sometimes I wonder, if I hadn't stayed, if I hadn't listened, would her story have ever been told, or would she still be waiting, in silence, for someone brave enough to remember? It's been 3 months since I left my grandmother's house, 3 months since the whispers faded, the mirrors cleared, and I finally understood what she wanted me to see. But even now, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, expecting to hear those soft footsteps in the hallway, and for a moment, I almost missed them. The city feels louder now, too loud. Cars, people, laughter, chaos. It's strange how much silence can teach you to hear again. Back in that house, every creak, every sigh of the wind meant something. Now, the world feels so busy, it's easy to forget how to listen. When I left, I thought I was done with it. I thought I could lock the door, drop the keys off at the lawyer's office, and just move on. But I couldn't. Something about that house, about her, stayed with me. A week after I left, I got a call. It was from the local historian, an older man who'd read about my grandmother's passing. He'd heard whispers about that house for years, and wanted to know if I'd found anything unusual. I almost laughed. Unusual, that didn't even begin to describe it. When I told him about Eleanor, his voice went quiet. After a long pause, he said softly, "Alec, your grandmother's twin never had a grave." The words hit me like a wave. No grave, no marker, no goodbye, just an empty space where a life should have been remembered. So, I went back. The house looked smaller this time, less like a place of fear, and more like a wounded heart that had finally stopped bleeding. I brought flowers, wild lavender, my grandmother's favorite, and under the oak tree in the backyard, I placed a small stone with Eleanor's name carved into it. The wind was gentle that day. As I stood there, a single leaf drifted down and landed on the stone, and for just a heartbeat, I smelled lavender again, faint, soft, familiar. I whispered, "You're home now," and the air felt peaceful, like she'd finally been set free. After that day, something changed in me. I started writing again. At first, it was just notes, little fragments of thought about what happened, what I'd felt, but soon, it became a story. Her story, because I realized that if pain can echo for generations, so can healing. Sometimes people ask me if I'm scared to go back, if I ever think about staying there again, and I tell them the truth. I don't have to, because that house isn't haunted anymore. It's alive, not with fear or anger, but with love that was waiting to be remembered. Every family has secrets. Every house has memories. But not all ghosts are here to harm us. Some are just echoes, waiting for someone to listen, to see them, to say their name. My grandmother's will didn't test my courage. It tested my heart. And when I finally listened, I found a truth I'll never forget. The dead don't always want revenge. Sometimes, they just want to be remembered as real. So, if you ever inherit an old house, and the floors creak at night, don't run. Sit still. Listen. Because maybe, just maybe, someone isn't haunting you. Maybe they're just saying hello.